The hammer sang against iron before dawn broke over Audi. Ongyu worked the bellows with steady rhythm, watching orange embers flare to life in the forge's belly. His father, Agio, shaped a spearhead on the anvil, each strike deliberate, musical. Sparks danced like fireflies in the half-light. "Patience teaches the metal," Agio said without looking up. "Rush it, and it breaks when the hunter needs it most." Ongyu nodded, pumping air into the coals. The forge was their world, a clay-walled sanctuary that smelled of charcoal, sweat, and heated earth. Outside, Audi village stirred awake. Roosters proclaimed territory. Women's voices drifted from compounds as they swept courtyards clean. Audi sat cradled between two rivers, the sacred Educo to the east, mysterious and ancient with its adjoining forest of the same name, and Iria to the west, brown and patient, where women washed clothes and children learned to swim. The elders spoke in hushed reverence of Educo's power. When a new Aku was coronated as village chief, mystic crocodiles emerged from those sacred waters to greet him, creatures born of spirit and river, witnesses to the covenant between chief and land. The forest that bordered Educo was forbidden ground except to priests and hunters with proper offerings. Even the bravest men walked carefully near those shadows. The first customer arrived as sunlight touched the thatch roofs. Old Soken, a fisherman whose hands were mapped with scars from hooks and nets. "Agio, my brother." Soken raised a broken fish trap barb. The river spirits tested this one and found it wanting. Agio smiled, examining the metal. The spirits test all things. Some bend, some break, some become stronger. He glanced at Ongyu. "Heat it to orange, not red. We're mending, not melting." Ongyu placed the barb among the coals, watching it transform. This was how mornings passed in the forge. A parade of need and repair. Hunters brought bent spearheads. Farmers needed hoes sharpened for the new planting season. Fishermen arrived with broken equipment. Each transaction carried conversation. Proverbs dropped like seeds into fertile ground. "Your son grows tall," Soken observed. "Soon he'll swing a heavier hammer than you." "A tree grows toward the sun," Agio replied. "But its roots must go deep first." Ongyu said nothing, accustomed to being discussed as if he were still a child. He was 15 dry seasons old, lean and strong from forge work, but his father's protectiveness remained. Everyone in Audi knew why. When Ongyu was 4, his mother died bringing his sister into the world. A sister who never drew breath. Agio had moved them from their old village, seeking fresh soil for grief too heavy to carry alone. The story followed them like smoke, and though a decade had passed, some still called them outsiders in whispers meant to be overheard. By mid-morning, the forge hummed with activity. Agumanu arrived, the chief's son, Ongyu's closest friend since childhood. He carried a calabash of palm wine and news, always news. "The hunters returned from Educo Forest last night," Agumanu announced, settling onto a wood stump. "They say the bush pigs are fat this season. They made proper offerings at the forest edge and saw no crocodiles, which the priests say is a good sign. And they're talking about the festival." "Which festival?" Ongyu asked, knowing perfectly well. "The New Yam Festival. 2 moons passed." Agumanu grinned. "Specifically, they're talking about you and Agabi by the fires." Heat that had nothing to do with the forge crept up Ongyu's neck. Agabi, Aji the carpenter's daughter, with eyes like polished river stones and a smile she granted sparingly. At the festival, they talked while others danced, sharing roasted yam and shy laughter beneath the palm wine-soaked moon. He'd thought no one noticed. "Let them talk," Agio said mildly, hammering a hoe blade. "A young man and a young woman speaking. This troubles the earth somehow?" "It troubles Buba," Agumanu said quietly. The name shifted something in the air. Buba, Atanji the butcher's son, broad-shouldered and quick-tempered. Since the festival, his hostility toward Ongyu had grown from seeds to thorns. Shoulder bumps at the market, mocking remarks about forge boys who couldn't hunt, whispers about outsiders who didn't belong in Audi, who should return to whatever village spawned them. "Buba troubles himself," Agio said. The dog that barks loudest often bites nothing but air. But Ongyu felt the weight of it. Adi was small, 300 souls, maybe less. Reputation mattered. Grudges festered. And Booba had his father's bulk, his father's pride, and an audience of younger boys who laughed at his jokes and echoed his swagger. Old Atagani arrived then, leaning on his walking stick, face creased like worn leather. Agio, I need my machete sharpened. The yam harvest won't wait for dull blades. It will be ready by afternoon, Agio promised. Atagani settled onto a stump, sighing with the pleasure of rest. I saw young Booba at the market this morning. Chest puffed like a rooster before a fight. Mark my words, pride goes before a fall. That boy walks like he owns the river paths. Like he's the Aku of Adi. He shook his head. The ancestors see everything. Even crocodiles know when to be humble. The words hung in the morning air, prophetic and strange. Ongyu returned to the bellows, but something cold had touched his spine. The morning stretched toward the afternoon. Ongyu finished repairs on Tsoken's hooks, then gathered his own trap from the forge's corner. He needed to check his lines before the day grew too hot. Going to the river? Agumanu asked. The fish don't catch themselves. Be careful near Iduko Forest, his father warned. The sacred groves are not for careless feet. The crocodiles sleep now, but the spirits never do. Ongyu nodded and left, basket balanced on his shoulder. The path to Iria River wound through cassava farms and palm groves, past compounds where children played with corn husk dolls and carved wooden animals. Women waved from doorways. He waved back, feeling the village's eyes, always watching, always weighing, always remembering that he came from elsewhere. The river appeared through the trees, brown and patient, sliding past red clay banks. His trap sat in the shallows away from the main crossing, and he waded in to check it. 3 fish, decent size. He transferred them to his basket, reset the trap, and turned toward the main path. That's when he heard shouting. A cluster of people gathered upstream near the washing stones. Mostly girls filling clay pots, but boys too, forming a half-circle around something. Ongyu recognized the energy immediately. Confrontation, the air electric with potential violence. He approached slowly, water dripping from his legs. Through gaps in the crowd, he saw Booba towering over Otto, a slight boy of maybe 12 dry seasons. Otto's lip was bleeding. His eyes were wide with fear. Say it again, Booba demanded, chest puffed. Say you didn't mean to bump me. I didn't. I swear by the sacred river. You calling me a liar? Booba shoved him. Otto stumbled into the mud, hands splashing in the shallows. Laughter rippled through Booba's friends. But the girls near the washing stones had gone quiet. And among them stood Agabi, water pot balanced on her head, face expressionless but eyes watchful. Carpenter's daughter, known for her quiet strength and careful judgments. Ongyu felt something tighten in his chest. Not quite anger, not quite fear. Something older, harder, forged in loss and displacement. Booba, he called, stepping forward. Let him go. He's half your size. The crowd parted like reeds before wind. Booba's gaze swung toward him, and Ongyu saw the spark of recognition, the flash of something hungry and mean. Forge boy, Booba said slowly, savoring the words. Come to defend your friend? I came to check my traps. But I'm here now. Booba released Otto, who scrambled away gratefully, mud-streaked and trembling. The big youth advanced, rolling his shoulders like a wrestler preparing for combat. You've been avoiding me, ever since the festival. I avoid no one. No. Booba's smile was sharp as a skinning knife. You just hide in your father's forge, playing with fire and metal. Too scared to hunt in Iduko Forest. Too weak to fish the deep parts of Iria. Too foreign to truly belong here. Murmurs rippled through the watchers. Ongyu felt the trap closing, this moment engineered, inevitable. Booba had been building toward this confrontation, brick by brick, insult by insult, ever since he'd seen Ongyu talking with Agabi beneath the festival moon. I'm not scared of you, Ongyu said quietly. Then prove it. Booba gestured at the open ground near the riverbank. Right here. Right now. No weapons. Just strength. Let's see if the outsider's son has Audi blood in him, or just water. The crowd swelled, sensing blood. More villagers appeared, drawn by commotion like fish to bait. Angyu saw Agabi watching, her expression unreadable. Saw Booba's friends grinning with anticipation. Saw Otto's grateful, terrified eyes peering from behind older legs. If I refuse? Angyu asked, though he already knew. Then everyone knows. The outsider's son is a coward. The forge boy who talks to carpenters' daughters at festivals but runs from real men at rivers. The one who doesn't belong and never will. The words landed like stones thrown at clay pots, designed to shatter. Angyu understood the calculation. Refuse and carry shame forever through Adi's narrow paths, or fight and risk humiliation, injury, perhaps permanent loss of standing. But something else stirred in him. Something forge-hardened and deep-rooted. Something his father had built in him through patient years of hammer and heat. I accept, he said. The crowd formed a ring, instinctively creating an arena. Booba stripped off his upper cloth with theatrical flair, revealing muscles earned from hauling carcasses and splitting firewood for the smoking racks. Angyu removed his own tunic slowly, aware of how much leaner he looked. Forge strong but not bull strong, built for precision rather than brute force. They circled each other in the red mud. The river murmured behind them, indifferent to human pride. Someone began a low drumbeat on an overturned water pot, matching their footsteps, rhythm as old as the village itself. Booba lunged first, a grab meant to tackle and overpower, to end this quickly with sheer mass. Angyu sidestepped, letting momentum carry Booba forward into empty air. The big youth recovered quickly, snarling frustration. Stand still and fight. You first, Angyu replied, voice steady. They clashed again. A flurry of grappling, shoving, testing. Booba had weight and power, advantages he'd relied on his entire life. But Angyu had balance, learned from years of hammerwork, from judging heat and timing, from knowing when to strike metal and when to let it cool. Booba caught him in a bear hug, lifting him clear off the ground. The crowd roared approval. Angyu couldn't breathe, ribs compressed, vision spotting with lack of air. He drove his elbow down into Booba's shoulder joint, once, twice, 3 times until the grip loosened. He slithered free like a fish through a net, gasping. Lucky, Booba spat, red-faced. Skill, Angyu countered. They circled again, both breathing hard now. Sweat stung Angyu's eyes. His heart hammered against his ribs like his father's hammer against anvil. But something had shifted. The fear burned away in the forge of necessity, leaving only clarity. He saw Booba's patterns. Charge, grab, overpower. Predictable, brutal, effective against most opponents who relied on matching strength with strength. But the forge had taught Angyu differently. You don't fight metal with raw strength alone. You use leverage, timing, the understanding that force applied at the right angle, at the right moment, multiplies beyond its original power. Booba charged again, head down like a bull targeting a rival for breeding rights. At the last possible second, Angyu pivoted on his back foot, hooked his leg behind Booba's knee, and used the big youth's momentum against him. Booba toppled hard, face first into the mud with a wet slap that echoed across the river. Laughter erupted from the watching crowd. Booba rose, furious, covered in red clay that clung to his face and chest. He came at Angyu wildly now, all strategy abandoned for rage. Angyu dodged, deflected, stayed light on his feet. Each miss made Booba angrier, sloppier, more desperate. Fight me, Booba roared, swinging wildly. I am fighting you, Angyu said, ducking under a clumsy grab. You're just losing. The taunt worked too well. Booba launched himself forward with everything he had. A desperate, haymaker shove meant to send Angyu crashing into the river itself. But Angyu was ready, had been reading this moment in Booba's increasingly wild attacks. He sidestepped at the perfect moment, caught Booba's extended arm, spun him around using his own furious force, hooked both arms under Booba's armpits, braced his legs in the mud, and lifted with legs and back and all the strength the forge had built in him over 10 years of steady work, and dumped Booba headfirst into the muddy banks of Iria. The splash echoed across the water. Silence fell like a heavy cloth over the gathering. Booba surfaced slowly, sputtering, covered head to toe in brown slime that dripped from his hair and filled his mouth. He looked up at Ongyu standing above him on the bank, chest heaving, fists still raised, ready for more if needed. Then someone laughed, a single bark of amusement. Then someone else joined in. Then the whole riverbank erupted in waves of laughter that rolled across the water and up toward the village compounds. Even the palm tree bows when the wind insists, old Atagani shouted, slapping his knee with glee. The quiet pot boils the hottest soup, another elder called, voice rich with approval. Pride goes before a fall, Soken added, pointing at Booba wallowing in the shallows. The ancestors spoke truth, and the river taught the lesson. Booba dragged himself from the water, humiliation etched across every line of his mud-covered face. He didn't look at Ongyu, didn't look at Agabi, didn't look at anyone. He simply walked away, water squelching from his clothes, his friends trailing behind in awkward, diminished silence. Ongyu lowered his fists slowly. His body trembled, adrenaline draining like water from a broken pot, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Hands clapped his shoulders. Voices praised him. Boys who'd never spoken to him before suddenly wanted to be close, to touch the victor, to share in reflected glory. Through the crowd, a Gumenu appeared, grinning like a man who'd witnessed the impossible. That was, by the sacred crocodiles of Iduko, that was incredible. An older voice cut through the noise. That was foolish. The crowd parted respectfully for Manu Iti, one of the village elders, his staff tapping the ground with each measured step. He was ancient, had seen 3 Akus crowned, had witnessed the mystic crocodiles emerge from Iduko's sacred waters each time. But his eyes weren't angry. They were measuring, weighing, judging with the wisdom of decades. Foolish to fight? Ongyu asked, still breathing hard. Foolish to think you had a choice, Manu Iti replied. But wise in how you chose to fight. You dealt with a problem without becoming what you despised. That is the harder path, and the one that makes a man rather than merely a victor. Another elder approached, Mama Amakai, who'd known Ongyu since he arrived in Audi as a small, grief-shadowed boy holding his father's hand. She touched his cheek gently with fingers rough from years of grinding grain. Your mother would have been proud. Your father will pretend not to be, but his heart knows. Warmth spread through Ongyu's chest, more satisfying than any victory, sweeter than any triumph over Booba could ever be. The crowd dispersed slowly, carrying the story with them, already shaping it into legend, exaggeration, proverb. By nightfall it would grow in the telling. Booba would have been twice as large, Ongyu twice as clever, the fight twice as long. Such was the way of stories in Audi, where truth and tale wove together like threads in cloth. Ongyu collected his fish basket, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. His shoulders ached. His ribs hurt where Booba had squeezed. But he felt lighter somehow, as if he'd set down a burden he hadn't known he was carrying. Ongyu, he turned. Agabi stood a few paces away, water pot still balanced perfectly on her head, a skill that took years to master. She didn't smile, didn't say anything else, just nodded once, acknowledgement, respect, something unnamed but understood between them. Then she walked away toward her father's compound, and Ongyu watched her go, feeling lighter than air despite his aching muscles. Agumenu elbowed him, grinning. Come on, forge boy. Your father's going to hear about this within the hour. Probably already has. You know how fast news travels in Audi. They walked back together through afternoon heat that shimmered above the path. Past compounds where the story was already spreading, transformed and embellished with each retelling. Past elders who nodded approvingly, some even standing from their stools, a rare gesture of respect. Past children who pointed and whispered with wide eyes, already making Ongyu into something larger than himself. When they reached the forge, Agio stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face as unreadable as unworked iron. Smoke rose behind him from the banked coals. "I heard," he said simply. Ongyu waited, unsure what judgment would fall. "You remember what I told you about the metal? Patience teaches it. Rush it, and it breaks when the hunter needs it most." "And what did you learn today?" Ongyu considered, thinking of Buba's wild charges, his own careful timing, the moment when force and leverage and patience had combined. That some things can't be avoided, only faced, and that strength without wisdom is just weight without purpose. Agio studied him for a long moment, and something softened in those weathered features. Then he nodded, just once, the gesture carrying more approval than 1,000 words. "Good. Now pump the bellows. These hoes won't sharpen themselves, and the farmers are waiting. The earth doesn't care about river duels. It only cares about planting season." Ongyu grinned and returned to work, Agumanu joining him with easy familiarity. The hammer sang again. The forge breathed its ancient rhythm. And outside, Adi village settled back into its patterns. Conflict resolved, order restored. A new story woven into the fabric of communal memory that stretched back generations. The sun declined toward the western hills. Fishermen returned from Iria with their catches. Farmers came in from fields, hoes balanced on shoulders. Women finished their evening cooking, smoke rising from compound fires. And through it all, the two rivers flowed. Sacred Educo to the east with its mysteries and mystic crocodiles. Patient Iria to the west where a boy had become something more than he'd been that morning. Smoke rose from the forge in a thin gray column, climbing toward the cloudless sky, carrying with it the scent of charcoal, sweat, and something else. The forge-hardened strength of a boy becoming a man, an outsider becoming part of Adi's living story, written not in words but in the memories of those who witnessed, who told, who would remember. The hammer sang, the river flowed, and between them life continued, richer for what had passed. Did this story capture you? Subscribe to get more tales from the mythical village of Adi, the enchanted land of our ancestors. Drop a comment below, which moment gripped you most. Thank you for watching. The end.